a 365 GTB4, otherwise known as a Daytona. It's a 4-cam, 4.4 liter V12 Ferrari. 1971, 1970 to 1972, about when they built it. Maybe I think even 73. It's a front engine, rear drive, transaxle car, 5-speed. I always call it the Italian Corvette because it's just a big monster car. Big engine up front, long hood, short deck. Pretty wild car. So these cars are great highway cruisers. I mean, the fact that this car participated in the Cannonball Run will tell you, I mean, it's just a huge highway cruiser. I mean, it just sits and motors along. I think the average speed of that run that Brock Yates did was 85 miles an hour. Now, I know they've broken that record, you know, substantially through the years, but you got to remember, this is like 1971, 1970. I mean, to have a car just drive across the country averaging 85 miles an hour, pretty impressive. And whenever you get in this car, you see that it almost was built to do that. I mean, just moving along at 100 miles an hour across the desert is what I see on this car. Also, it's just got such a road presence coming at you. It's a big car. It just kind of says, get out of my way. Like, it feels like a big, heavy car with lots of power, lots of presence. You know, it's not as flashy as let's say a Testarossa later on, you know, which is a lot of flash. But this car, it just sits there and just says, I'm to be reckoned with. So when you're driving down the road, it definitely feels heavy. People complain about the heavy steering. You know, I have a big thing about the heavy steering. I don't think Daytona steering is heavy. I mean, I get to, these days, everybody's putting these electric power steering in these old cars. And I don't know, I have a thing against it. I mean, I've driven them with electric power steering. It certainly changes the character of the car. I mean, yeah, you can palm the wheel, you can move around, but, you know, it changes the character of the car. I mean, I don't know, did all of a sudden everybody get noodle arms? They can't drive a car. Oh, I can't drive it, doesn't have power steering. It's like, you know, I used to drive an old Mustang when I was in high school that had manual steering. You know, it was a little heavy, it was hard to parallel park, but, you know, family people, moms drove those cars back in the 60s. They drove them filled with kids, and they didn't have a problem driving a manual steering car. Now all of a sudden, oh, I can't drive a Mustang with manual steering. The steering's too heavy. Oh, and that's what they complain about the Daytona. They always say, oh, the heavy steering. Well, you know, if you parallel park at Daytona, it's a little bit of a struggle. You have to kind of put your arm, you know, shoulder into it to turn the wheel. But it's not impossible. What ends up happening is, at speed, it's very light. I mean, you can feel it talking to you, but like, you can drive it with your fingertips at speed. You know, don't try to parallel park it. But how often do we honestly parallel park our cars anymore? So, I don't know. I just feel like to do the change, to chop up the under part of the car, and people go, oh, it's all reversible. You're not going back to manual steering after you put a power steering unit in electric steering with all the electrics and everything. It's going to stay that way, and you know, you're going to miss parts, you're going to lose parts to return it, and you know, you do have to cut the steering column and things. So I don't know. I don't think it's worth doing because you're changing the nature of the car. I feel you should leave the car the way it feels, or else every car is going to feel like a modern Mercedes or a modern Audi or something. You know, this is an old car. That's what it feels like. It drives like an old car. That's the whole old car experience. But that's just my opinion.